Hello, hello. It is Tongue Lashing Tuesdays here on the Indubitably Sus podcast. I'm tired today. How about you? I made a commitment to come on here Tuesdays and Fridays. So we're calling Tuesdays Tongue Lashing Tuesdays and Friday Free Speech Friday because there is a lot to talk about. There's a lot coming up. There's a lot happening in the world. There's a lot of frustration in, I'd say, politics and social circles and, work, parenting, education. I mean, what isn't broken right now, right? So I feel like there needs to be an opportunity for me to be able to just vocalize the things that are on my mind. And when I was growing up in my later adult years, maybe my teenage years too, I started to, grow my own voice as I was becoming a adult and less of a child. And my mother, who doesn't always approve of or agree with my opinions, would, in my opinion, feel threatened by the things that I had to express. And in doing so, I would sometimes get very passionate. I tend to be a very opinionated and passionate person. And I think there's a lot to be opinionated about. But growing up in a family that tended to have, I would say a little bit more kind of classic liberal leftist values. The more I grew up, I started to think outside the box and have opinions that didn't align with my family's. And so as I started to get older, I would be more and more confident in my voice. But typically my mother, who was a very dominant figure in our family, would often feel threatened and would, debate me in a way that would be very pointed and hurtful. And so she experienced my verbal exchange, so to speak, our volleying of voice. If my opinion didn't match hers, which largely matched or echoed what was being spoken on mainstream media, in particular CNN and MSNBC, were my folks' preferred channel of choice for their news information, which I call propaganda. And if I had an opinion that was, somewhat different from theirs, I wasn't afraid to say it. However, it would usually start a response that was very judgmental, and the conversation almost inevitably would devolve into my mother calling me a tongue-lasher. And so that is kind of where the word Tongue-Lashing Tuesday, I've learned to embrace it. It's one of those things that I think my mom tried to shame me over, that she, didn't enjoy the fact that I had my own opinions and they were opposite or, seemingly in conflict with hers, and that there was no place for me to have an opinion that, to her felt like, I guess, threatened. To give you an example, I think many of my opinions about parenting and raising my own children, myself as a sole parent, victim of domestic abuse, survivor, it wasn't a comfortable thing for my family, for my parents to, express to their own friend groups. I was a little bit of an embarrassment for them. And so I recognize that, and, I give them grace and forgive them for, having those kinds of opinions about me, but it didn't hurt any less. And so when I decided to go forth with both of my pregnancies, and having the intention and devotion to say, I'm going to raise my children in a way that I want to raise them. And what that meant for me was having a home birth, being very intentional about parenting in a way that was different from my own upbringing. Again, not trying to force feed my ideology onto my children. I raised them with ideas that were very Christian in nature. And even though I grew up Catholic, I think as I got to be, I went through all of the sacraments. I was baptized and, made my first communion. And as I kind of progressed into my adulthood, the family, kind of, I don't know, separated themselves from the church and our going to Sunday Mass. And I think, like many families in the United States, we started to become a little bit more of a Christmas, Easter kind of Catholics. That simultaneously, I think, happened because of really because of the families that we were surrounded by. I mean, we lived kind of middle class, upper middle class, and really it wasn't encouraged in many of the communities that we circled in. We were quite busy as a family. I was a dancer, and I did some dance competitions. I was also in the color guard and played organ, and I played violin, and my brother and sister also did quite a bit of extracurricular activities. And so I think after a while there was number one, less and less time, or free time or spare time, and so Sundays became kind of one of those down days where we didn't have to go anywhere. So it was a little bit I think of a relief for my parents to not have to go anywhere else. And also there was a little bit less interest. I think the threads, the fabric of our faith seemed a little less important to the family. And for me, it never really jived when I was having to go to CCD, to Sunday school. I didn't really understand it. What I loved about the faith was the magical feeling. I loved the music. I loved the magical feel to Sundays, and that feeling of being connected, and the spiritual embodiment of being being presenced by God, a spirit, learning the story of Jesus. What I really felt, I don't know, was abrasive in the teachings, as I know it, is just the absence of feminine, and what is the feminine role. And it felt very, at least in my didactic studies of Christianity, of Catholicism, was, where does Mary live? Like, there was so little introduction. It was so masculine focused, and felt to me like, almost from a toxic standpoint, that it wasn't very appealing or interesting. And I think as the movement for my generation, Gen X, kind of moved into the realm of feminism, I feel like that destroyed the underpinnings of our Catholic faith, because there started to be a little bit of dissonance, as feminist women started to move forward in a way where there was an encouragement for women and girls to become more independent and, become providers, and to push forward into the workforce to adjust or make up for what the baby boomer generation had perceived to be lacking, or something that they couldn't achieve. So there was a lot of pressure to become more a producer in our economy, in our world. It didn't always resonate for me, but at the same time, as an intellectual person, I did enjoy feeling like I had a lot of I guess, opportunities, like I didn't feel like it was something that I couldn't be. At the same time, I feel like I had to push aside my desire to be a mother. And so, kind of circling back to the differences between me and my mother, one of the biggest differences we had was the way that I chose to birth and raise my girls. As a sole parent, I was determined to have a home birth because I just am a naturalist through and through. I believe that, my human body was made to be, fully capable of self healing, of birthing. I don't feel like pregnancy is a condition where, one needs to go to a doctor and receive all of these, XYZ interventions. And so I feel like my body's sacred. I wanted doctors to get their hands off of my body and allow me to have pregnancies that were um, healthy and whole and beautiful. And I had two really beautiful, wonderful pregnancies through and through, followed by midwives with absolutely no complications. Not going to say it was easy by any means, with no support, living by myself and working full time. It was absolutely challenging. Um, but I did it, and did not have the support of either of my daughter's biological fathers, because they were abusive relationships. um, there's a lot to say about that. I can tongue lash on how that happens. How did I end up as an intelligent and strong woman in those kinds of circumstances. I think part of it is learned, and part of it is fate, and part of it is sociocultural. So that is probably a story for a Free Speech Friday. But for the sake of today's Tongue Lashing Tuesday, what I am most angry about right now in all of that, I think it feels to me that there is just a total disregard for women, especially, who have chosen a path to be supportive of their children, to choose something that was, a very inconvenient and uncomfortable story. To do, I have zero regrets over it. I wouldn't do it any differently. I, had absolutely beautiful pregnancies. I feel so very blessed to have been able to find, the most amazing midwives, to have two healthy, wonderful daughters. God, I loved mothering. I loved pregnancy. I loved mothering. Honestly, those years I look back at as being entirely blissful, of being able to mother in the ways that I wanted to. And they came with, the challenge of feeling like I was not supported by, it wasn't just a feeling. I mean, I was not supported by our social structure. I definitely was not supported by my parents, my family, who, frowned upon my choices. They frowned upon my determination to do things in a way that was, questioning vaccine schedules, to be questioning the way that they did things. And, it wasn't a judgment. It was just that, I feel when you know better, you do better. And having had, enough education, having had enough experience, having had enough, I guess honestly, I feel having had enough ability to trust my own intuition. I feel incredibly blessed that I have, my own capacity to be able to hold myself in that ability to self-trust, to self-determine, to self-source my own wisdom. and rely on that rather than the common narrative. And so there's been so many examples of, how that's played out in my life, with the um, COVID things, the little arm darts that little experiment that many people went for. I didn't, and that caused a lot of conflict and undermining, especially living in New England, especially living in Vermont of all places, where 95% went along with the mainstream narrative. But not only that, there was a certain social exile that made me unable to have to have even less support, to be a sole parent that was, already on the fringe of society, but then judged on top of that, and having to raise kids in a way that was very different from my peers, who were putting their kids in front of computers and putting cell phones in their hands from, elementary school age. I didn't do that. And I felt really, really strongly that that was going to be the downfall of, this younger generation. The foods that, my peers were giving to their kids, these very convenient sugar snack, highly processed foods with, food additives and food dyes. And I was onto that so many years before. It was hard. It was hard to find community. It's even more hard now to find community coming back to New England after, going south for a couple years. Yeah, times are hard. I feel like, there has been some movement in the direction of engagement with, I guess was being called conspiracy theories, which, I was put into that category as a cult leader and a conspiracy theorist, and called all kinds of names, you name it. The slurs and the shaming was relentless, unrelenting. So it continues now, I think, from a more, I don't know, subconscious. It's a little bit less pronounced, but it feels more undermining. It feels like more demeaning. It's more under the radar. There's, this, subconscious, just passive aggressive. Maybe that's the word. The right word is not really coming to me at the moment, but I think you get it. There's just a different way, of attacking without attacking. And I wonder about where we're headed as a society. I wonder about what my children will have for their future, what's going to, come of all of this. What I can say about myself and my journey and the path that I've chosen, as, challenging as it was and is, to have been, exiled and shamed and have, my character assassinated, to have my child brainwashed and kidnapped and, led to believe that she should alienate, her family. Whew. I mean, there's been a lot of grief. And at the end of the day, what I can say about it is I've processed all of the things that I've been accused of, all of the things that I've been judged for, And I know who I am. And I'm on the side of truth. And I am in deep faith over, being on the side of goodness. As hard as things were, as hard as things continue to be, I wouldn't do anything differently because I'm so proud of myself. I have integrity. I haven't changed my story. I haven't changed my values. I haven't changed my opinions. My ethics still in place. I believe that there will be a better future if we can all get on the same page, if we can all come together in truth, in justice, for the sake of justice. There's a lot of work to be done, and I am looking forward to all of you out there doing your part and speaking up and choosing something different. Don't take the path that's easy. Don't take the path that's comfortable. I think that's where we've been led into this comfort and convenience cycle, which has led us into a field of apathy, indifference. I just see so many people who are tuned out, gaslighting themselves to accept, a narrative that is convenient, that you don't have to, do some shadow work. You don't have to do a deep dive if you are really accepting false narratives. I think it's easy to lie about your situation. It's easy to silence somebody and cancel them, and have a convenient story. I think that's where society, the large part of society, has gone down, and we're not better off for it. So that's the tongue lashing for today. I hope you all continue to fight with me. Love ya. See you soon.